Please subscribe.
Try not to call the 2019 Subaru Ascent only an Outback with a father body. The 3-push hybrid is the biggest vehicle at any point delivered by Subaru, and it is sold just in North America. When it goes at a bargain in the mid-year from about $33,000 to begin, the Ascent will interest families unflinching by sheer vertical mountain dividers, however mysteriously frightened of owning a minivan. The Ascent is offered in base, premium, limited, and touring trim levels. With the Ascent, Subaru at long last has an expansive hybrid SUV to supplement its outside prepared lineup of littler hybrids, wagons, and vehicles. The Subaru Ascent is worked in Lafayette, Indiana. In spite of the fact that the Ascent is new for Subaru, its styling is in a flash unmistakable. It gets quite a bit of its outward looks from the Subaru Outback, including its wagon extents and window crimp nearer to the back rooftop column. The nose of the Ascent is emphatically greater and taller, with a bigger and more upright grille opening than the Outback. The trapezoidal grille is flanked by hawkish headlights, and LED headlights on top trims. Inside, the Ascent is centered around family detail with a standard second push seat that can be swapped with skipper seats on premium, limited, and touring trim levels for no charge. The Ascent sports another turbo 4 for Subaru that is combined to a constantly factor transmission, CVT, and standard all-wheel drive. The 2.4-liter turbocharged level 4 motor makes 260 pull and 277 pound-feet of torque and is appraised to tow up to 5,000 pounds in premium trim levels or higher. The CVT works like a conventional programmed transmission amid overwhelming speeding up and mimics gears when squeezed, however it's to a great extent entrusted with keeping the enormous all-wheel drive hybrid eco-friendly. It's appraised around 22 miles per gallon joint, which is keeping pace with our perceptions and contrasts well and other 3-push family haulers. Like each other Subaru, aside from the BRZ Sports Auto, the Ascent will be furnished with standard all-wheel drive at all models. Combined with 8.7 creeps of ground leeway, 4-wheel autonomous suspension, and decent low-end snort, the Ascent is proficient on rock streets or for let-going 4x4 ramping obligation. Its main goal, notwithstanding, is solidly as a family vehicle first. The Ascent highlights 3 lines of seating for up to 8, with 19.9 cubic feet of freight room accessible in the back with the second and third lines set up. In spite of the fact that its inside size is generally like the Chevy Traverse, extra space to move around in the third line is chopped down to 31.7 inches, down a few creeps to the Traverse, however significantly more than littler hybrids with the contracted third column, for example, the Volkswagen Tiguan or Land Rover Discovery Sport. With the third line collapsed, the Ascent will hold 47.6 cubic feet of payload, up to 82.5 solid shapes with just the main line set up. Fabric seats are standard the base Ascent, with premium including an alternate material trim, and limited and touring trims highlighting calfskin stowaway. The Ascent rides on Subaru's new worldwide stage that supports the Impreza and Crosstrek. Crash test scores are incredible, and the Ascent is furnished with standard propelled well-being highlights, for example, forward impact alerts with programmed crisis braking, dynamic path control, and versatile journey control, which the automaker marks as visual perception. Vulnerable side screens and a front-aligned camera are accessible on premium and higher trim levels. On touring trim levels, Subaru makes standard a back-confronting camera that is anticipated onto the rear-view reflect, like Cadillac's framework, for unhampered outward vision and a front-aligned camera. Base models are outfitted with 18-inch wheels, 4 USB ports, a 6.5-inch touchscreen, material upholstery, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto ability, 3-zone atmosphere control, and the eyesight security frameworks. At the best, touring trim levels will get cowhide upholstery, warmed and cooled front seats, wood grain trim, a 8.0-inch touchscreen with root, a Harman Kardon sound framework. The 2019 Subaru Ascent lodgings the Outback's outside style, however plans it on a Highlander's shape. That is not an awful thing, but rather it's additionally not enormously energizing. We give the Ascent a point better than expected for its inside, which is tasteful and raises Subaru to standard status for the time being. All things considered, the Ascent is in a flash conspicuous as a Subaru. Think about an Outback and a housecoat. From the side, the Ascent obtains quite a bit of its looks from the littler Outback, however the Ascent's face and shoulders are for the most part its own. The nose is taller and bigger, with a greater grille opening and more articulated bumpers to fold over standard 18-inch wheels, or 20 inches on tinier trims. Inside, the Ascent includes a brilliant cluster of family includes revolved around its standard touchscreen and little things stockpiling. Indeed, there are almost 20 cup holders in the Ascent, yet no, you don't need to fill it with containers, nor do the entryways look like Swiss cheddar. Shrewd highlights, for example, a roost on the traveler side dash for telephones and patterns for long elbows close to the entryway columns give us the insight Subaru has touched base for inside design. Execution autos aren't family autos and the other way around. The 2019 Ascent was never going to pro our muscle at us, yet it does splendidly well. Gazing from a base score, the Ascent gets focuses for a maid and delightful ride and another point for a Turbo 4 that is superior to most in its class, and asking for less sheet metal to haul around. The Ascent flaunts another motor for Subaru, a 2.4-liter Turbo 4 evaluated at 260 pull and 277 pound-feet of torque. It's supplemented by a constantly factor-programmed transmission, CVT, that we've swooned over previously, and standard all-wheel drive on each trim level, a Subaru trademark. Subaru gauges that the Ascent rushes to 60 miles per hour in 7.4 seconds, a number that gives a false representation of the excited throttle. That jitteriness is to some degree a Subaru trademark, and in different models shrouds the general lethargy of the powertrain, however not here. The Ascent jumps from the line by and large and saves enough to make throughway passes sensible at lawful rates. Credit may go to the CVT that Subaru has aced in different cycles previously. Here in the Ascent, the single apparatus with variable proportions escapes the motor's way and warriors through revs when called upon. Squash the throttle and the CVT reenacts 8 speeds, with to some degree stout moves, or can be called with controlling wheel-mounted or shifters. It's our most elevated acclaim to call a CVT undetectable, yet the Subaru's transmission is superior to anything that, it's ready and empowering as well. The single all-wheel drive setup is a natural Subaru application. Since the Ascent is accessible just with a programmed, the all-wheel drive framework is an electronically controlled unit that sends capacity to front or back wheels relying upon hold. A standard X mode recreates low extend designing for going romping. Don't chuckle, the Ascent has a similar ground freedom as a Jeep Grand Cherokee, and slow punch control for dubious plummets in the Ascent. We couldn't encourage ourselves. The guiding is typically light and without show through the wheel, yet the Ascent is generally simple to put out and about. It's wide, and feels more extensive, however during our time in the driver's seat of the Ascent, the enormous 3-push SUV appeared to recoil around us, and that is the most we could inquire. Most models will oversee efficiency around 22 miles per gallon, which is predictable with our perceptions. More than 140 miles in Oregon, we oversaw 22.6 miles per gallon as indicated by our figurings. The Ascent is evaluated to tow up to 5,000 pounds and in our constrained testing, is spring up to that errand. Realities: Subaru is a local Chinook word that signifies seats. Rising is another Chinook word signifying more seats. That reality may confront investigation, yet we're certain the overflowing space and capacity will. The 2019 Ascent is the biggest vehicle work by Subaru, and it appears Albeit every one of the 3 lines of seats are pleasing, we won't call them significantly more than normal. The Subaru Ascent offers 153.5 cubic feet of traveler space, which is equivalent to a Honda Pilot. Notwithstanding 3 lines of seats, which are about all reasonable for grown-ups for shifting degrees of time, the Ascent flaunts 17.8 cubic feet of payload live with every one of the seats up, or 47.53 d squares with the 3rd line collapsed. In advance, the seats are agreeable and steady, yet might not have enough reinforcing to keep expansive carry grown-ups set up. The second push Chiefs seats are appropriate for grown-ups and kids alike, with 2.1 amp USB ports to charge ebb and flow gadgets, separate atmosphere control, in many trims, and a lot of little things stockpiling. The 3rd line brags an inadequate 31.7 cubic feet of extra space to move around, yet horse trading with second push travelers makes it sufficiently only to overlap in little grown-up legs. A few Ascents gloat 2 more 2.1 amp USB ports and tablet stockpiling, in spite of the fact that we imagine that space is most appropriate for little kids. In our testing we found that a convertible auto seat can fit in the 2nd line without an object, even back confronting seats with a grown-up sitting ahead. At the point when the auto situate is in the front aligned position, the 2nd line seat slides forward sufficiently far to enable a flexible grown-up to get into the way back without evacuating the auto seat, and auto situates in the 2nd and 3rd lines can be effectively obliged at the same time. In spite of the fact that the Ascent needs family accommodating highlights found in the most recent minivans, for example, in auto vacuums and back seat stimulation, the huge Subi is inviting for groups of every kind. There are 19 cup holders to hold bunch mixes of soft drinks, juice boxes, water containers, and espresso mugs, and the ride is whisper tranquil and quiet enough to have any family diversion night. The Ascent procures the Top Safety Pick Plus, which implies a turn great scores for all accident tests and